The 2023-2024 Utah Athletics calendar has concluded, but now it gives us an opportunity to look back and talk about the best moments on the year that was Utah Athletics. Let's discuss the top moments from the year on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media. You can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all caps, no spaces, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by sports writer Austin Eames on today's show. And Austin, you just graduated from the University of Utah too, so excited to get your perspective on this topic. How we're going to be talking about the best moments in the year that was for Utah Athletics, and what, if I'm not clear enough on what the year that was, I mean fall 23, spring 24 together, the best of the year for Utah Athletics. We're going to go back and forth talking about the best moments. Now, how I did my list is I picked my favorite moments on the year. I did not say, hey, Utah reached this mark, which is higher than any other sport. Like, I have a mix of a ton of sports in here as well. But the first moment I'm going to say is not the pinnacle of what Utah achieved this year. This is my list of personal moments. And I would love to hear your guys in the comments. Give us your top 10, because that's what we're going to be doing, drafting them, going back and forth. I thought about being nice and giving Austin the first pick. But then I realized I really wanted to talk about something. And since it's my show, I decided I'm going to give myself the first pick. So now that I've rewarded myself the first pick, the moment that for me is number one on the year that was Utah Athletics 23-24 campaign is Utah football winning at USC yet again. That was the highest moment for me on the season. I just remember watching that back. Even as the kick went through, like, you could just tell with the injuries and everything mounted that the wheels were going to kind of fall off the train. I even said that around the time, I believe, of like, this was the peak of the mountain, beating Caleb Williams again, winning at USC, really dealing the biggest blow to USC's just anything they had hoped to do on the season, with Bryson Barnes making gutsy plays with his leg, this defense doing their best to contain Caleb Williams, and then the late kick that walked Utah off for the win by Cole Becker. Just so special. How can you not look back on that game? For me, that was the top moment on the year in Utah Athletics.
You know what, JT? I'm frustrated you got the first pick, because that was mine. That was my pick. That was such a good game, and I think it was such a good game for so many reasons. And obviously, you listed a lot of them, but I really think it was the coming out game for Utah football this season in a lot of ways. I mean, everything came together. The offense, the defense, it was just a great game. I think it was one of Bryson Barnes' best games. People might argue that the Arizona game was his best, where he threw 4 touchdowns. But, I mean, he went 14 of 23 passing on the day, had 235 yards, 3 touchdowns, the rushing touchdown. It was by far, I think, his best performance of the season. He stepped up in the big moments, especially at the end of the game. And he wasn't the only one. I think Sione Vaki that game had 217.
Yeah, that's where Alex Grinch was just decided he was like not a receiving option out of the backfield, and Vaki absolutely torched him in the passing game. Actually, we had 5 receptions for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game. So, and on top of, how about Jaquindon with 117 rushing yards in the game too? My goodness.
Yeah, just an amazing game in so many ways. And I think, as you already mentioned, the last quarter of that game, specifically the last 8 or 9 minutes, I think was immaculate, especially in terms of raising my blood pressure, because I remember watching the game, and it's the most stressed I've been watching any sport in a long time. But yeah, the last couple minutes of that game, Utah settles for the field goal, goes up 31-23, and then USC has to take their own field goal, which comes after Caleb Williams fumbles the snap on 3rd down, leads to 4th down. They have to take the field goal. They stop Utah. Utah has to punt. And then Zachariah Branch has an almost 60-yard punt return. And it looks like everything's over. There's 2 minutes remaining. USC has the ball. Caleb Williams rushes for a touchdown, goes up by 1 point. And then with a minute and 52 seconds to play, Utah orchestrates just a great 2-minute drill. There were third down conversions. There were fourth down conversions. And like you said, game-winning kick to seal the game. Just perfect. Mwah.
It truly was perfect. Something I won't forget. It was also Lander Barton's final game of the season. Maybe the best he's played at a Ute. He led the team tackles, had 9. So many guys stepped up. It was an epitome of what this Utah team was last year, a total team effort. And, you mentioned maybe the Arizona game for Bryson Barnes. I would push back on that narrative from fans in general, because to me, number one, Utah lost that game and I thought a lot of Bryson's stats in that game were empty calories because Utah got absolutely steamrolled and there wasn't as much pressure. The USC game, he made winning plays. That's what I care most about. So that's where I might go USC being his best performance for that reason. So Austin, I apologize for taking the top pick. Every other moment on the season is still on the board. What would be your second pick?
That's a tough one. There's a lot. But I think my second pick has to be Utah basketball handing BYU their first loss of the season. I mean, how could you not pick it right behind the Utah football USC game? That game against BYU was the first sold-out Huntsman Center crowd since 2017.
Yeah.
That's insane. And go back and watch the highlights. The stadium was electric. And obviously, I mean, I think Utah fed off of the crowd because they played alongside BYU, and the closest the game got was 61-59. I think Utah led most of the game. 38 minutes and 41 seconds to be exact is what Utah led. They only trailed in the opening minutes when BYU took a 3-2 lead. Utah was dominant this game. And I think, once again, kind of like the football game against USC, the entire Utah basketball team, the entire running youth squad came together and they squeaked out a win against a BYU squad that was just so good this season.
They were really good. I mean, you look at what BYU did on the season. They had a really strong year. I mean, they made the NCAA tournament. Yes, they lost to Duquesne, but that BYU team was good. But Utah that day at home was better. And man, what a glorious game it was for the running Utes, to your point as well, just to see them best the Cougars. I mean, how could you not love a 73-69 win? Team effort too, as you mentioned, guys like Madsen playing a large part in there too. You also got Brandon Carlson, of course, chipping in with 15 and just finding a way for Utah to win. They got off to a great start in the first half, couldn't maintain the momentum in the second half in terms of they got outscored by the Cougars by 10 in the second half, but still found a way to win late when it mattered most. And yeah, that is a game that none of us will forget in the near future. And you mentioned the sellout crowd being such a big reason why too, such a special event and day for Utah. So those are our first 2 picks. We still got several more to go, especially I'm excited for this next one. It is another football one. Don't get too mad, but I got a special reason that it's a football one. We're going to be talking about more of the best moments on the year for Utah Athletics in one moment. But first, want to discuss with you all our great friends at Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. They have great last-minute deals, all-in-price views from your seat, their low-price guarantee. Gametime truly takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can pick out any selection and matchup you want, whether it's for NHL, MLB, or of course the NBA, because with the finals are here, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, etc. near you. You can save even more as exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game with flash deals or zone deals where you pick a section, let Gametime choose your seats. Those all-in price views from your seat is something I love too, where you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The Gametime ticket coverage, where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And that's without even mentioning the low price guarantee, where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. It's capital LO, and all of the word college is capitalized, but there's no spaces between, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. You can download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Austin, I got to go with another football moment for my third pick, and this is a personal one. Once again, this is my list. Leading up to last season, we spent so much time talking about the Florida-Utah game. And Florida fans in particular, I do my best not to let the negative comments, and I don't get that many. You guys take good care of me. I'm definitely lucky. You guys don't give me too much of a hard time, and I appreciate that. But, man, Florida fans, I could not get those ones out from under my skin before the game started. There were a couple that were just driving me insane and nuts. The SEC bias was rampant. You all dealt with it in various Twitter X messages and comments. It was crazy. It was annoying. And you know what was really annoying for those Gators fans? When they got absolutely stomped outside the swamp in Rice-Eccles Stadium. Utah laid the hammer down on them. No Cam Rising, no Brant Keithy, no problem. Bryson Barnes, Nate Johnson, and a dominant defense leading the charge that helped Utah topple Billy Napier, putting him on the hot seat right away, which I do think is funny because I just don't think Gators and SEC fans realize how hard it is to win in Rice-Eccles Stadium. Literally took a team that made the Pac-12 championship, was a game away, and has a Heisman contender in order to do so. But man, Utah gave the Gators just everything they could handle on that day, beat them 24-11. I loved every moment of watching Utah, especially from, the first snap was the Money Parks awesome touchdown, Sione Vaca's interception. What a lovely day it was for the University of Utah back in August.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, JT. I was fortunate enough to be in the stadium during the game, and I remember vividly the Money Parks pass. I remember us all watching Bryson Barnes uncork that pass and being like, what is he doing? And seeing Money Parks come down with it, score, and oh my gosh, just the most amazing way to open a season. Crowd was electric. I think Utah's defense really shined that game, held the Gators to 13 yards rushing, 1 of 13 on third down conversions. It was hard for Utah to play in Florida last year, but I think it was even harder for Florida to play in Utah this year because they didn't have much going on for them offensively. But yeah, it was just a complete team win. I think it was a great start to the season. Obviously, to see Bryson Barnes flash a little bit, nobody really knew what to expect after his limited snaps the years before. But yeah, just a great way to start the season.
It was a heck of a way to start the season, and a memory none of us will forget for sure. Austin, where are you going for the 4th pick in our draft?
Going to women's basketball, JT. I think in the middle of January, the women's basketball team had a really, really impressive weekend. I think maybe one of the most impressive weekends in program history, and that's beating USC and UCLA back to back. At the time, USC was ranked number 6th in the nation. UCLA was ranked number 2 in the nation, and Utah beat them both back to back. I think in the first game, it was a dominant Utah victory, 78-58. And Alyssa Peely looked like the most dominant player in NCAA women's basketball that game. She scored 37 points on 13 of 16 shooting, had 5 of 6 shooting from 3. And it was the Utes' first ranked win of the season. And it was completely dominant. You watch that game and USC never had a chance. And I think it carried over into the UCLA game. That game was closer, went into overtime, but it was the, I think, highest ranked victory in program history for the Utes and tied 72-72 at the end of the game. Inez Vieira went and scored the dagger to send the game into overtime, and Utah took it over in overtime, and they came out with the win. And I think that was a really high point for the Utes in the season.
Absolutely was a high point in the season. It was so much. That was absolutely, and it was on my list as well too. Those back-to-back massive wins. Alyssa Peely leading this team to victory. Lynn Roberts doing a great job. It was so great, and that was the best part of their season overall, being able to get those huge wins. Because unfortunately, the injury to Gianna Neepkins just wasn't allow them to make the run in the NCAA tournament. We all knew they were capable of had they been healthy. I'm going to stay on the women's sports side of things, do off of women's basketball, though, and go to Utah Gymnastics to win the Pac-12 for a 4th year in a row, to go back to the national championships for the 48th year in a row, amidst all the chaos that was surrounding this team in the offseason, to see this group, Miley O'Keefe, Jaden Rucker, Grace McCallum, all of them lead the charge, find a way to get it done. And for these Utah team to make history under Coach Dockendorf is incredible. And it was a moment watching and seeing them, be able to edge out Oklahoma, take advantage of those struggles, and help them punch their ticket along the way into the next round of that regional matchup before they head off to the national championship meet. It was just spectacular. So I will go in particular. One moment would be them fighting their way through for the national championships, but them just get all the success they experienced last season was just an incredible story.
Yeah, the women's gymnastics program had an amazing season. Obviously, they've been one of the winningest programs at the U for a long time. They've done a lot for the sport and women's sports in general in the state of Utah, and their meets are just so fun to go to. I think obviously the Pac-12 championship this year was a really big moment for the squad, coming out first and making it to NCAAs. Obviously, NCAAs didn't come out the way you wanted it to, but you're facing some of the best squads in the nation, and I think Utah really put up a good fight. So it was great to just see the girls succeed this season.
Yes, it was. So we are now 5 picks into our draft. Austin, where are you going with number 6?
Going back to football, and I think while USC might be the Sione Vaki game, obviously he had 217 yards of offense. I think California was where we saw Sione Vaki's offense for the first time. Utah beat California in that game, 34-14. Sione Vaki had 15 carries for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the 72-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter was awesome to watch. But in that game, I think it was the most rushing yards by a Utah defensive back since 1996. Sione Vaki had the first defensive back rushing touchdown since Eric Weddle in 2006. So it was just great to see Sione Vaki break out on offense as a two-way star. And it was great overall to see Utah win against Cal. Obviously, Cal not having the best season might have been an easier victory for Utah. But still, I think Utah suffered their fair share of injuries this year, and it was great to just see a dominant victory for the Utes.
Yes, it was. And speaking of victories for the Utes, and that's a great that one, Sione Vaki, everything he did there, that was remarkable. For my next pick, I want to go on another big victory for Utah, and not even just, I guess it'd be several, because it was the totality of Utah's resume that allowed them to get back to the NCAA tournament. But that's just such an impressive feat for the Utah softball team to return to the NCAA tournament for a second straight season. Credit Coach Hogue, Mariah Lopez, this group coming together that for back-to-back years. And the Pac-12 is a gauntlet. I mean, look at some of these games Utah had to play. They had to play Washington. They actually they won the first 2 games before the last one had to be canceled, rolling into the Pac-12 tournament. Beat Oregon, who's top ranked right away, beat Stanford, fall to UCLA. But that Stanford win, they were ranked 8th. So it was those big wins that got them to the postseason. Sure, they only ended up winning 1 game, losing 2 of their 3 games to South Carolina. But to make it to the NCAA tournament is such a challenge, especially in a conference as tough as the Pac-12. For them to have won 35 games this past year and punch their ticket to yet again another postseason tournament, I thought was a huge tip of the cap to Amy Hogue and what that group was able to do.
Yeah, like you said, it's big anytime you can go to back-to-back NCAA tournaments. And I think they went 35-22 on the season. We're 13-5 at home. The Utah women's softball team is dominant, and I think they did really good, like you said, this season against Pac-12 competition. And I think Pac-12 is one of the best conferences in the country when it comes to softball, if not the best. Obviously, you have tons of ranked teams: UCLA, Stanford, Washington, Arizona. So they had quite a schedule this year, and I think they really triumphed over it. Obviously, there were some low moments, but I think there were more high moments. So I'm excited to see where the program goes, where it's headed the next couple seasons, because I think it's only going to get better.
I agree. I'm excited to see what is in store for them now that they transition to the Big 12. Coming down to our last few picks here. Austin, you're up with pick number 8. Where are you leaning?
Pick number 8, man. Well, I'm going to move to baseball. And I think there's one game in particular that sticks out to me.
It's on my list too.
Well, I'm glad I get to steal it. You stole USC.
Yeah,
from me. I get to steal this from you. 27-4 victory over Utah Valley. Obviously, Utah baseball had one of the better seasons in recent memory. And I think this game is just the epitome of that. Set a Pac-12 era program record with 30 hits in the game. If you don't know anything about baseball, just know that's absurd. 30 hits, 27-4 victory, as I said. 8 batters that game had multi-hits, more than 1 hit. I think TJ Clarkson, who's a right fielder for the Utes, had 5 hits. Kai Roberts also had 5 hits with a stolen base. He's amazing. I watched him all season long, wrote about him quite a bit, and he's insane. He stole so many bases. He had so many hits. I think he might be really good at the next level. We'll see. Core Jackson, Utah shortstop, had 4 hits and was a triple shy of the cycle. Caden Carpenter, designated hitter, had 5 RBIs and was a home run shy of the cycle. 11 of Utah's hits went for extra bases. Just I've used the word a lot, but a dominant victory. We're talking about some of the best moments of the year, so there's going to be a lot of dominant performances. But I think when you talk about dominant athletic performances from Utah's 2023-2024 season, that Utah baseball game, I think, is number one.
I agree. I think it was an incredible feat. The Pac-12 comeback record, all of that roped in. It was fantastic and a sight to behold for that Utah baseball team, and definitely the most memorable moment for them on the season. In a season in which they did a lot of positive things, but I mean, when you make history like that, got to talk about it. All right, so we're at pick number 9. Oh, I have 3 picks here that I all would want to have in the top 10. You actually said one that did not make my list, so obviously we have slightly differing lists, so we'll do some honorable mentions in a moment. Yeah. But for my 9th and final pick, I'm going to give the men's basketball run into the NIT a shout out. Look, missing the NCAA tournament sucked, but the team really showed out well in the NIT. I mean, you got to give them credit. Of course, we knew they were going to take care of business in the first round against UC Irvine, right? But then to see them beat up on a program and a team like Iowa that's had a lot of success in the past, to edge out VCU, right, a competitive team in a non-competitive game. Yes, they lost to Indiana State in the semifinals, but give that team credit. Robbie Avila did a lot of good thing. Was also in Indiana, so they had the home crowd advantage too, which also played part of it. And yes, I know that means Utah lost another road game, and that is not a good thing. We're talking about the men's basketball team, but making a run in the NIT, it doesn't change the fact they were one of the last teams left standing. I still think that deserves a shout out in the top 10 because they did prove they were truly one of the best teams that missed out on the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, the wins in the NIT run, obviously you want to be in the NCAA tournament, but I think the NIT run was good for the morale when it comes to the Utah's team. Good for Craig Smith and just his guys. Good for Brandon Carlson and his end to his Utah career. I got to go to a couple of those games at home, and game against UCI was great. Game against Iowa was great, and yeah, it was just awesome to see Utah compete in a postseason tournament. They haven't got to do that for quite a while, so I think it was a good way to end the season. Obviously, didn't come out with the win against Indiana State. That was hard, but a good end to what was a rough last little bit of the season for Utah basketball.
Yeah, it wasn't a rough ending, but still ones with some nice moments along the way. Austin, we've reached pick 10. You got to give me pick 10 and any honorable mentions you had that weren't able to quite crack our list.
Oh man, I am conflicted, JT. I think a lot of moments that can make this last spot, but I want to shout out a sport that maybe doesn't get a lot of love too often, and that's golf. I want to shout out Braxton Watts for winning the Goodwin golf tournament. Braxton Watts didn't crack the top 100 at the Goodwin, which is a tournament in California at Stanford's home course, TPC Harding Park. He didn't crack the top 100 in 2023, and this year he shot a 5 under and won the tournament, which is a crazy feat because there's 168 players competing. So number 1 out of 168. It's pretty amazing. He's the first Ute ever to win the Goodwin, and his 5 under 205 score, which sounds like a lot, but it's over a couple of rounds, was the lowest score ever recorded by a Ute at the course and the best 54-hole score of the season for the Utah golf team. I also want to shout out Watts. He shot a 59 last year at Oak Ridge Country Club, which is insane. That's, I don't know, breaking 60 in a round of golf is crazy. And he just recently, on a more recent note, was tied for 35th in the NCAA Division I golf championship. So Utah's got themselves a stud.
Yes, they do. Do you have any honorable mentions you wanted to throw out there, Austin?
Honorable mentions, college game day up until the actual game.
That was the toughest cut for me was college game day because we're both such big fans of the sport. We're such big fans of the show. I think we can both agree. Having it back on Rice-Eccles Stadium for the first time since I believe 2017 was just special. Kyle Whittingham, I know it was for McAfee's show, but him rolling up on the motorcycle was so awesome too. So everything around that, having the pregame show in college football up at our university was something I won't forget.
Yeah, that was a really memorable weekend for me. Obviously, I think it would have been my number 1 had Utah been able to come out with that game against Oregon. But that Oregon squad was talented, so that was just a memorable weekend. It was a great weekend. Once again, I was a student, so I got to camp out. I camped out overnight, got there at 5 a.m, got to watch all of the guys from College Game Day do their thing. And it was just such a memorable experience. Obviously, like you said, we're fans of the sport. College Game Day is it's an institution of college football. And I was sad I didn't get to see Lee, but hey, man, it was a great time.
It absolutely was. I do want to you mentioned the golf team. That was a team. That was actually my sport when I was in the athletic department, as I covered most of the golf team. I wrote a lot of the stuff for them. So always going to be happy to see head coach Garrett Clegg and the squad do things, and them getting back to the NCAA tournament was something awesome this season too. Biggest honorable mention I also wanted to just mention was Alyssa Peely's individual performance against South Carolina back in December. That was an undefeated South Carolina team. And Alyssa Peely put the Utah team on her back, nearly knocked off the Gamecocks in that game pretty much single-handedly. I mean, had 37 points, 15-23 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, just doing everything out there, even a couple of steals. Couldn't quite get it done, but that was my main honorable mention. So what a special game that was for Peely. And just overall, what a special season it was in Utah athletics. Several other moments we could have mentioned or brought up. Let us know in the comments what we missed. Would love to see your guys' list once again. But that is our top 10 moments on the year for Utah athletics. And one thing, Austin, we both hope is that the men's basketball team will have more than 2 on this list. We would love to talk about them in the NCAA tournament. Well, they made an addition to try and get their goal of getting to the NCAA tournament, as they added Mike Sharabjams, and I believe that's his name. I apologize if I butchered it, but Mike is a guy who's really intriguing. I mean, we're talking about a 6'9" guard he's listed as. I think he'll play more of the 3 at Utah, but maybe some 2. We'll see. But look, this is a guy who played at Dayton for 1 year, then transferred to San Francisco, and he improved his averages from year 1 to year 2. This is a guy who averaged 7 points per game, 3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 0.9 steals. You can see this catch and shoot shot is there, and the shot is going to continue to trend up. This is a guy who's just smart. He makes the right play. I love his length. He really competes on both ends of the floor. He got better each of the last 2 years. You can see why this guy was a big get, why he was well sought after throughout the transfer portal. Illinois was a school that wanted this guy, but Mike thought Utah was the best place for him, and I think this is a massive get for Craig Smith and co. This is a starter who can compete on this team in meaningful games in Big 12 action.
Yeah, JT, you said it. Mike's really good. I think he declared for the NBA draft prior to last season, and there's a reason that he did that, and it's because coaches and scouts see that he has tons of potential, and I really think he showed that with the Dons. I think he had a great season last year, like you said, showed a lot of improvement, shot 42% from the field, 36% from 3, and he's improved. Obviously, he started at Dayton, and then ever since going to USF, he's gotten better, and he's lengthy, like you said, 6'9", played a little bit of guard. I think he can kind of stretch the floor, go anywhere, but he's one of the better passers in the country. You watch his game, and he makes the right pass. He can really hit players in stride, really just get balls where a lot of players can't. And I think he's going to be really good for this Utah squad that really needs a facilitator. And I think Mike Sharabjams can be that.
They absolutely do need a facilitator, and it feels like he's a guy who can check a number of needs. He's a winning player based on what I've seen, and I'm hoping he helps this Utah team win a lot of games in the 24-25 season. That is going to do it for our show. Once again, make sure you guys comment below your best mitts, your best moments of the year. What do you think Utah athletics, how do you think Mike will impact the program? So much stuff to talk about. Austin, always great having you stop by with us. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, of course. Thanks, JT. Thanks for having me, man.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you very soon talking more things in the world of Utah athletics. We look forward to seeing you then.